The movie starts off with a hyper-realistic view of Bikini Bottom above water. I must say, this looks extremely well done. I wonder how long it took them to render this out. This could actually be mistaken for real life. It's so textured. This is definitely giving me Finding Nemo vibes. For crying out loud, guys, we can even see Dory swimming through the water here from Finding Dory. The lighting, the shadows, all used in conjunction to tether an artist's freedom to suit the story's mood and tone. Water refracts the light. Sponge on the Run may not be the best movie of all time, but there's no way I'm letting this hate for this movie overshadow the amount of effort put into this animation. We're now introduced to SpongeBob, Gary, and the other fish of Bikini Bottom doing yoga at the Krusty Krab. Kinda strange seeing this, not gonna lie.
Oh, don't worry, Gare Bear. I'll be back before you can say, why did he cruelly abandon me like that?
SpongeBob's memory must be pretty bad. Does he want Gary to abandon him like last time in the older SpongeBob episodes? Gary come home? We all know how that went and how sad SpongeBob was. So he better treat Gary right this time and not joke around. Squidward clocks into his usual miserable shift at his station. Just because this is a movie doesn't mean Squidward's gonna be excited, since he still has to work for greedy old Mr. Krabs. Pretty accurate and animated well. We can even see the slouch in Squidward's walk, which is subtle yet admirable.
Anyway, to fire her up, you've got to spark her flints manually.
Man, I know there's still criticism for this movie, but there was still a lot of time put into this animation. His mannerisms and movements, the twirls, are not only true to SpongeBob's nature from the cartoon, but it actually brings this film to life.
Don't involve me!
The Squidward hurt trope. Personally, I didn't laugh at this scene. Also, the original cartoon has beat this gag to a pulp. And seeing this in 3D for some reason, the joke just did not work. I felt unmoved. Something felt off. Is it because Squidward did nothing to deserve it? I'm not sure. These new 3D animated movies oftentimes feel strange because a comedy isn't hitting as it should. I'm not sure how to explain this.
Who's ready to set sail on another adventure making me money?
Now I will say this, I did laugh at this scene. No one wants to make Mr. Krabs more money except SpongeBob, and the fact that Squidward just walked in to walk back out is hilarious. Strange seeing how this scene made me laugh, but the other scene didn't. And this one had little to no movement.
Enjoy it while you can, Mr. Eugene Krabs.
Okay, is it me or should the back of the Krusty Krab have a dumpster? In the older seasons, we saw the dumpster with the word SpongeBob wasn't allowed to say. So where exactly is it? How exactly do they empty out the trash? Bruh. Mr. Krabs should really try investing in a dumpster. Being cheap doesn't mean you have to be dirty too.
Oh, stupid machine!
Plankton's character and frustration is accurate. Plankton is upset over his usual shenanigans never work. In a desperate attempt to finding a solution that actually works and is worth pursuing, he goes to his wife, Karen. You know, the computer that uses Windows XP from 2001, Karen.
Every time I've tried to steal that formula, Krabs has tried to thwart me.
Not Mr. Krabs.
Something interesting actually happens, which I didn't really expect to see, is that Karen actually participates in this discussion and even gives him some crazy good advice.
SpongeBob is the one who keeps spoiling your plans, not Mr. Krabs.
She gives Plankton a reality check and tells him it's not actually Mr. Krabs he needs to worry about. It's actually someone we all know and love. After all these years, he's been focusing on the wrong person, who made his plans fail. Honestly, Karen did have a point here, but I still think SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs spoils his endeavors from time to time, but that's just me. We cut back to the good old Krusty Krab and getting scenes of SpongeBob. Morphing, duplicating, glitching out. To be honest with you, this is true to his nature. He is a sponge. A sponge Bob. All these wacky movement and gags. We've seen this in the SpongeBob intro. We're seeing it here. We see it in the cartoon episodes. We see it everywhere. Not a surprise. Fun little touch. Easter egg, I guess you can call it.
Did you know that in the future, everything will be automated?
Did you know that everything in the future will be automated? Wow, thanks Sandy for that random fact. I'm sure the children watching this movie needed to hear that. At first, this seems to be the most random comment, but it plays into what is to come. Sandy created a robot that was designed to make life easier. She tries to sell it to Mr. Krabs. Not the worst idea. No salary is needed to pay this thing. However, you must pay up front. And of course, Mr. Krabs thinks about this. It's a crazy idea, but his greed gets the best of him and he eventually gives in. But the robot ended up misbehaving and tried to fire Mr. Krabs in the process, so he did what any sane person would do to their employee. He throws them in the dumpster. Wait a minute. Okay, so there's a dumpster, huh? Why the heck is it all the way in the front, man, to the right side? Doesn't that throw the customers off? The smell, the look. Whose idea was it to leave it out there in the open for all to see? Wouldn't it make more sense to put that thing behind the eating establishment, not in front? Plankton manages to sneak in, hidden in plain sight, waiting for his chance to make a move. He eventually reveals himself out of the darkness and begins his diabolical plan. Pretty sneaky of Plankton here. He definitely got better at hiding in things and came prepared with gear and everything.
Yes! Krabs' fast food empire will fail!
Plankton gets his hand on what he's been after this whole time. You know, you'd think the Krusty Krab would have a tighter lockdown on these things by now. Their security should be top-notch after all these years. But it seems like Plankton easily got past everyone, including SpongeBob. Even when SpongeBob barged his way back into the room, he still was clueless as to what took place. I have to say, the shading in this scene is spectacular, man. For all the people downing this movie as the worst SpongeBob movie, sure, I won't go against your personal opinion, but let's give credit where credit is due. While it is true that this movie is questionable, it still took a lot of power to produce this, and we all know this. I like how we're introduced back to our little title cards we see in the original cartoon. That's actually pretty cool that they added that in.
3,000 years old, and check out my skin. It's like a baby's butt.
We jump over to the palace of King Poseidon, the ruler of the 7 seas. An egotistical entity. King Poseidon is obsessed of how he looks. Doesn't really care about anyone else. Very, very prideful. And treats people very, very bad in this movie, as we're gonna see. But yes, he's constantly looking in the mirror. And this is actually a pretty interesting touch because he actually reminds me of King Neptune. Yes, from the first movie, King Neptune, a well-known character in SpongeBob, but to keep his beauty, he needs something from snails. Their juice.
We're out of snails.
What?
When he realizes that they're out of snails, he does what any sane person would do and kind of panics in this situation. He is thirsty for the juice, okay? He needs snails. And there is one snail, because, you know, snails, they're going extinct in Bikini Bottom. But the thing about this is that he goes through the craziest measures to get that snail. And it's wrong. We come to find out that he's gonna go after Gary the snail. Poor Gary, man. I can't believe this is happening to him. Why? But I like how they introduced Gary in this movie to play a role. You know, Gary is not just a side character. Gary's been a main character for a long time. And to see him have kind of a main role in this movie, kind of, is interesting.
Did you know that in the future, everything will be
Croissant.